Hey folks, Doc Patterson here. It's good to see you. Our lesson for this week comes to us from the Gospel of Luke chapter 9 and more specifically verses 28 through 36. Let me encourage you to go ahead and read that. You might want to turn off your device and go ahead and read it now and come back to this video, or at least read it later on. It's worth doing that. But something we need to know about chapter 9 as we get into it, and that is the question, just who is this guy? Referring to Jesus, is central to the chapter. Early in the chapter, King Herod found himself perplexed because some of his attendants were saying that Jesus was John the Baptist risen from the dead. Herod wanted to know who this guy was. Well, he's John the Baptist risen from the dead. And of course, King Herod had John the Baptist beheaded, so you know that threw King Herod into a tizzy, that answer. Some others of his attendants said that Jesus is one of the old prophets coming back to haunt Herod. Jesus himself asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they said, "Well, some folks think you're Elijah, but who do you think I am?" asked Jesus. And Peter said, "You're the Christ, the Messiah." Christ is the Greek word, Messiah is the Hebrew word. They both mean the same thing, the anointed one. Well, Peter got the answer right, but for the wrong reason. You see, Peter, like the rest of the apostles, was still stuck in that Davidic model of the Messiah. They assumed that Jesus was going to reestablish the kingdom of Israel like it was when David was king. They thought Jesus was going to raise an army and drive out the Romans and capture surrounding nations and restore prosperity and make Israel the nation above all other nations. Well, Jesus responded by saying just a few days later, "Jim, John, Pete, get your backpacks. We're going to the mountains." Well, when they got there, the mystic episode known as the Transfiguration occurred. And don't you know, Father God spoke to those three apostles, telling them just who Jesus is. He said, first of all, he's my son. Second of all, he's the beloved. And third, he's someone you need to listen to when he speaks. Let's start with he's my son. Folks, I've made a lot of things in my life. I've authored stories and poems. I've built boats. I've written songs. I've researched, written, and delivered thousands of sermons, and the list goes on. But all of that together doesn't begin to compare to the children that my wife and I made together. Making our sons and our daughter are the best things we've ever done. Now, you may disagree with me, but I think the same is true of Father God. His Son, the Christ, is the best thing he's ever done. You say, "Patterson, how can you possibly say that? God has done so many wonderful things. He made the entire universe and everything in it." Well, let me tell you about this universe and everything in it. It's all made, everything. It's all made of aggregates of carbon dust molecules. And we human beings just happen to be some of the fortunate aggregates that God animated. From a molecular perspective, the statement "from dust we came, and to dust we shall return" is a true statement. Accepting this, Father God gives us the opportunity to escape the carbon dust cycle through the sacrifice of the Son. Without the Christ, when your earthly life is over, it's over for good. For those of you who go by the Christian calendar, we'll be reminded of that at our Ash Wednesday services, when carbon dust is imposed on our foreheads in the shape of a sacrificial cross. Just who is this guy? He's my son. The best thing I've ever done. But secondly, he's the beloved. Now there's a word that we don't use much. We're familiar with it. We assume everyone knows what it means, but we really don't. I did a deep dive researching the origin of this word. And at the bottom of that research, I discovered that the phrase, the beloved, means the chosen one. Let me tell you a story about my dog, Tucker. The year after I graduated from college, which was quite a while ago, I moved to a tiny town named Mahaffey in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest. The house I lived in was 100 yards from the west branch of the Susquehanna River, and spread all around me was the National Forest. You could hunt in the forest, and although I didn't grow up in a hunting family, I decided I would become a hunter. I also wanted a dog. So I went to a breeder of beagles to get a hunting dog. Well, that's what I told people. The actual reason is I wanted to get a beagle because there is nothing on the face of this earth that is cuter than a beagle puppy. Well, they had a litter of 9 puppies that were ready to leave their mama. And I loved them all immediately and wanted to take them all home. But there was one that just sat there looking quizzically at me as if to say, "What is it I can do for you?" That puppy, Tucker, became the beloved, the chosen one. We're all sons and daughters of Father God. He doesn't love any of us more or any less than any other of his children. But Jesus is the beloved. Just who is this guy? Well, he's my son, the best thing I've ever done, and he's the beloved, the chosen one. The third thing that God said to Pete, Jim, and John is this: when Jesus speaks, you guys better listen to him. Folks, I love to read the wisdom of the ancient philosophers. I get fired up when I get the deep theological insights of the early church fathers. I was raised under the intellectual rubrics of John Wesley's Methodism. I'm amazed at the expanse of Thomas Jefferson's knowledge, and Tecumseh, the great Shawnee chief, had a mind for tactical and strategic thinking that in my book knew nearly no boundaries. And then there's my grandpa, undereducated and under-refined, but the wisest man I'll ever know in this life. But all of that together doesn't begin to compare with the universal principles that Jesus taught. His teaching provides ongoing, dependable truths that, if practiced, bring significance to your existence, meaning in the midst of life's quandaries, purpose in your daily life, and the ongoing joys of the gift of satisfaction regardless of the circumstances of life. I have never met a person who, after truly and authentically and genuinely listening to Jesus, regretted it. Just who is this guy? Well, he's my son. The best thing I've ever done. He's the beloved, the chosen one. And you should listen to him. For those who have ears to hear. And folks, that's just about the long and the short of it. You take care, and we'll see you next time.